Hello and welcome to our presentation by Alstom on their Zero RFQ program. My name is Stephen Miller. I'm a customer success manager at a priori. I'm very happy to welcome back Sebastien Girardot from Alstom today to give us a further update on the Zero RFQ program. We're hoping he will be joined by James Presley from Clark Specialty Company, who were one of the first suppliers to engage in this process with Alstom. James is currently just logging into the system, so he may arrive mid-presentation. So before we begin, just a few housekeeping notes. The attendee line will be on mute throughout the session. We'll be utilizing the chat panel on the conference website to address questions, so not the one in the Zoom. So please feel free to put questions onto the chat panel, and at the end of the presentation, we will address as many of those as possible in the time. We will be recording today's session and we'll be making that available along with a PDF of the material used today. So at this point, I will hand over to Sebastien to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Stephen. So I am Sebastien Girardot. I am the a priori key user at Alstom Transport. I am located in France, in Paris. And today I'm going to present you what we call the Zero RFQ process, Zero Request for Quotation. And I'm going to do this presentation with one of our supplier, Clark Specialty Company. So just to start, okay, so today we are going to talk about the Zero RFQ process we put in place at Alstom. Just after a very short presentation with Alstom, and we will finish with a testimony of Clark Specialty Company. So where is Alstom? So just few figures about Alstom. Alstom is a French company born in the east of France 70 years ago. And we are, of course, located in France, but all over the world. So we have many sites in all continents. And last year, we did 9.9 billion euro of orders and also a turnover of 8.2 billion euro. So you can see it's a very big company. We have almost 4,000 employees around the world. Of course, most of them are in Europe, but we have also a lot of employees in Asia, in Americas, especially USA and Brazil. And we have 105 sites and on 60 countries. And we have 280 customers. So yes, Alstom is a very big company. Okay, what a priori Alstom makes? Okay, Alstom provide a complete range of transport solution. So of course, rolling stock, but also signaling services and all the systems that comes with the rolling stocks. I work in the rolling stocks department, that is the biggest in the company. And of course, we make trams, tramways, metros, suburban and regional trains, high-speed, very high-speed trains, locomotives, but also electric buses. And we also make components, of course, for our trains, like traction, bogies, and motors, but we also provide these components to other players in the world, like, for example, Siemens, Bombardier, that are all other big players in the transportation in the world. Okay. Here you can see there are some few examples of our products. So for example, you can see a tramway in Rio de Janeiro. You can see also the French TGV, the new version. It's a very high-speed train that can go to up to 200 miles per hour to 320 kilometers per hour. We have also a big locomotive for India. And you can see also regional trains for South Africa and the Netherlands, and also an electrical bus that is a completely new product for us. We are very new in this market. The last one, of course, is the very high-speed train that we are developing for Amtrak in the USA. We have a site in the USA located in Ornell, New York State, and with this site, we make this new high-speed train. So this high-speed train will travel in the Northeast Corridor in the USA, from Boston to New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. And the speed of this train will be around 160 miles per hour, so a little bit more than 260 kilometers per hour. The design to cost department. The design to cost department at Alstom is a department where I work. And in this team, we have several missions. We work on tenders to evaluate the cost of a future project, but we also work to develop costing methods, cost models. We help for the negotiation with suppliers. We work on innovation, on global market vision, and we support all the different branches of the company to help them to cost and evaluate the cost of the product. Of course, we work on different parts of the train, electrical part of the train, the car body shell, exteriors, electrical motors, brakes, pantograph, bogies. In fact, there is all the design to cost department works on all the different parts of the train, everything. In this department, we use different products to help us doing this quotation, from the simple Excel datasheet to a very complex database. And of course, among all these products, there is a priori. So a priori is a key software in our department to support this activity. And you can see that a priori can be used on many, many different missions or products. And we can, with a priori, cost a complete car body shell that contains thousands of parts. All the exterior motors, pantograph, and bogies are costed using a priori. Almost everything is costed with a priori. Only electrical and batteries can't be costed with a priori because it's not the product for that. For interiors, you can see that for the moment, we don't use a priori to cost interiors of the train, but we will do that very soon. I am supposed to train new users to this from this department very soon. So, okay, very soon we will cost also interiors with a priori. We use a priori since 2013, and we have now 30 active users. Most of them are located in France, 18 of them are located in France, but we have also users in our all main sites. In India, it's growing a lot in India, in the US, and South Africa also. And we expect 15 new users in the coming 3 years, 21, 22, and 23. So we are growing a lot. And maybe you know that Alstom Transportation is in the acquisition of Bombardier Rails. And so maybe the number of users will grow more than 15 during the next few years. During the last 12 months, we costed 26,000 parts in a priori. 26,000 parts in a priori in 12 months. So you can imagine that since 2013, we costed hundreds of thousands of parts in a priori. We have now a very, very big database. At Alstom, in the design to cost department, we cost with a priori a lot of metallic parts. You have an example on this screen of all the parts that we cost in a priori, from the most simple primary part to very complex assemblies like traction cubicles and the complete car body shells. And we can cost everything with a priori. However, for the simplest parts like primary parts or small assemblies, we wanted to have a dedicated purchasing process. So that's why we created a new process that we call Zero RFQ, but Zero RFQ for the moment is only for these simple parts or simple assemblies. So, okay, so what is the purchasing process? We had a problem at Alstom in the purchasing process for some simple parts. In the design of a train, there are a lot of small metallic parts, small brackets, small sheet of metal parts that are designed very late in the design process, at the very end. For example, all the parts that are the link between the car body shell and the interior of the car, for example, are some small brackets, very simple parts, and they are very often designed at the very last moment. That's why, in fact, we need, as soon as we get the 3D models for this part, we need to place POs for several hundreds of parts in a very small amount of time. So it's a big load for the sourcing department. And the problem is that because these parts are designed very late in the design process, the sourcing must buy this part for yesterday. We are very late in the design process. And with this solution, sending parts and RFQs at the very last moment, so we need to create hundreds of RFQs at the same time. We need to send that to our suppliers, and we want a return from them very, very soon. So this means that we have no possibility to wait for all offers to come back us. And this is sad to say, but very often the first supplier that answers the RFQ is the winner. And we have no time for negotiation. We have no time to check the costing returned by the supplier. And the consequence is that, in fact, we purchase in a rush and with hardly no saving. It's a problem, and because we put the pressure on our suppliers, because we want to be delivered immediately, we get, of course, a poor quality, a poor cost, and a poor delay. That's a problem that we had. So, in fact, to solve this problem, we imagine a new purchasing process that we call the Zero RFQ. The idea is not to send any RFQ to the supplier, but to directly send them the PO. So how does it work? The idea is, okay, we have a very simplified process. As soon as we have the 3D models from the CAD system, when these parts are ready for quotation, we code them in a priori. So in a priori, we make a pre-selection of some suppliers, because we already defined some VPE, some virtual plant in a priori to be able to cost the part for different suppliers. And we can make a pre-selection of the suppliers. So we cost the part in a priori return a cost for the part, a price for the part, and we just generate POs with this cost estimated by a priori, and we send the PO to the supplier, and that's all. So it's very, very fast. So there are many advantages, many benefits doing that. In fact, the PO is at the computed price, and we can save up to 3 weeks doing that. So we really shorten the process. And this is exactly what we want, because as I said, we are very late in the design process, and we want the part now. So we have no time to wait 3 weeks to answer and to collect all RFQ from the suppliers. So it's a very flexible process. And one of the main advantage too is that this process saves resources at sourcing, at Alstom, but also at the supplier place, because of course we don't have to spend hours to create all these RFQs and send them to the suppliers, and we don't need to. The suppliers don't need to quote this part in urgency. So for a small supplier that has a limited team for the quotation, it's a real benefit, because you don't have to spend night and days to quote the part if he wants to return the RFQ on time. So it's a real benefit for the suppliers too, not only for Alstom, but also for the supplier. So of course, to play with this process, we need first to sign an agreement with the supplier. And how do we do that? So this is how we put in place the process. So to do that, the first step, of course, is to find the supplier. So the solution is to meet the supplier, to propose the Zero RFQ process to the supplier, to explain him how it works and what are the benefits for him, what are the benefits for Alstom, and how it works. So the most important thing to do is to explain the supplier that we use to quote the part. We use a software that is a priori, and it's absolutely necessary to explain him how it works. If we don't do that, he thinks that it's just a black box that generates a magic number. It's not true. And so we have to show him that a priori can make a very accurate quotation of a part, provided that we give a priori the right labor rate, the right machine definition, the right overheads, and everything has to be given to a priori if you want a priori to give a good result. So if the supplier is convinced of that and is okay to go to this process, The second phase is to create the digital factory in a priori, the famous VPE. So we ask the supplier to give us all his material prices and dimensions, all the machine definitions, all his hourly rates for the different processes, overheads, everything. So with all this information, I can create the digital factory in a priori. So I am the one that does that at Alstom. It is one of my job at Alstom to do that. So I can create this VPE, this digital factory. Of course, at the same time, the sourcing team continue to discuss with the supplier, because we have also to define what is the margin to take into account, what is the price of the packaging, what is the price for the transportation of the parts, what is the lead time. So this is a negotiation, a discussion between the sourcing team and the supplier. And after that, the next step, of course, is to test the VPE I just created before. So to do this test, it's easy. In fact, we just give the supplier a list of parts, maybe 5, 10, 15 typical parts, and we ask him to quote this part with this traditional process. And we do the same with a priori using the VP we just created before. And we compare the results. And of course, there are always some small deviations between the quotation made by the supplier and the quotation made by a priori with using the VP, but we are not very far very often, because if in a priori we enter the right machine definition, the right hourly rates, machine overheads, and material costs given by the supplier himself, there is no reason that we find a very different results. So, okay, sometimes we have to fine tune the results. Maybe we have forgotten a small material markup or a small percentage somewhere. We just do this fine tuning, and very, very quickly we get a very accurate results. And at the moment, the supplier say, okay, I now consider that your VPE, your software give a very good result, and we can validate the contract together. We're using this Zero RFQ process. And after that, of course, we can launch the process. So starting from this date, if Alstom wants to buy some parts to this supplier, some simple parts, we ask the supplier, we quote the part in a priori using the VP created for this supplier. A priori gives a cost for all the parts, and we generate a PO with this number, and we send the PO to the supplier. And the supplier can start making the part in the next few days. It can be very, very short. This is one of the advantage. So this process, to put in place this process, it can be done in just 4 weeks. It's very short. If the supplier is convinced that it's a good process, if he gave us the information from his to define the digital factory quickly, it can be 4 weeks. Of course, sometimes it's a little bit longer because there are some discussion, but this is something that is very, very fast to do. So at Alstom, we have already signed this contract with many suppliers. And during the last 12 months, we added 5 new suppliers. It was a challenge because of the COVID crisis, of course. It's difficult to travel, to visit the suppliers. But okay, we have been able to do that. So during the last 12 months, we added 5 new suppliers. We have 1 in Spain, 2 in France, 1 in Denmark, and a very new one is located in Mexico on the Pacific coast. It's the very last one. And in the coming year, we expect to add 5 more. Now we estimate that this process gave us 40% on savings on the recurring cost. So it's a big number. And why is it so big? Just not only because, of course, when we cause the part with a priori, we know that we get a good cost with a priori because the product is very accurate and we get exactly the cost we want. But of course, when we compare this cost to the cost given by the suppliers that are not in the Zero RFQ process, we have a lower value. Because the supplier also accept smaller cost because of the benefits for them. And another thing to take into account is that not only we save money on the part themselves, but also we save resources at Alstom. We don't spend so much time doing this RFQ, doing everything. And of course, it's the same thing on the supplier side. So these are all our suppliers that played the game with us. And among all these suppliers, one of them is Clark Specialty Company. This company, it's a supplier, a small company located very close to our site in the US. Our site in the US is located in Hornell, New York State. And Clark Specialty is located a few miles from this Alstom site. And so now I would like to introduce Mr. James Presley to you. And James Presley is owner and president of Clark Specialty Company. So James, I hand over to you.
Yes, hello. We're very honored to be part of the process and part of this presentation. And we've been in business for about 75 years, coming this next year. And we have a variety of machines, which was probably about the only challenge, I guess, for this process. As Sebastien says, it's a model of our company, so we have quite a mixture. We also have quite a mixture of experience being in business for 75 years. We know how it was when you didn't write with anything but pencils, or the people at the beginning. So it took us about 6 months to complete that process, which was back and forth until we got to a part where it was win-win for Clark Specialty and Alstom. As Sebastien said, we're 20 minutes away from the location. And once we get an RFQ taken care of, the parts, the priority process has taken approximately 2 weeks off of the 4-week lead time. So we come in between 2 and 3 weeks. Sometimes with some parts we can have them the same day. It has strengthened our relationship with Alstom and the Hornell location, and it gained us a lot of business. We had 585 POs for the Amtrak project, and it was somewhere in the neighborhood of, we're still doing it, but somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.2 million US dollars. And we found it to be very, 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 very happy to be part of it. We've also bought new machinery, a new laser machine to keep up with it. So I've been very, very happy. Here's some of the parts that we've made. Our role was to make smaller parts, brackets and stuff, as Sebastien said, at the end of the process. We're still getting some for the Amtrak project that have went through some rev processes, but it makes it very easy to respond to any kind of change. It also increases our cash flow because of how fast we make the parts. So we invest in the flat material, obviously, and it's just been it's been very, very advantageous for Clark Specialty. So it has formed. We have formed helped our partnership. It guarantees work to us, as we're saying. There are some of the benefits. The instant revenue. It helps us plan. It helps us helps us increase our capacity, as I say, and our capabilities. We bought a new laser partially because of this, and we know how to respond to our capacity because we know what's coming in. Some of the challenges that we had were like for the process would be like unforeseen changes because we were about the newest one over here, And a lot of these parts have different coatings, anodizing, plating. That posed a challenge, but we got through it. Design changes was also, but no more, the design change, no more than the regular process. So, but if there was a process or a price increase, it sometimes was difficult there, especially in the volatile commodity market that we had this year. So, but all in all, we're very pleased, Sebastien, to be part of this process, and glad to be part of this presentation.
Okay, you can see on this image a few parts that Clark Specialty company made for Alstom. These are the typical parts made by them. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastien. Thank you, James. We don't have a lot of time left, but we've got a few questions on Q&A that we'll cover now, and those that we can't cover, I'll endeavour to respond back directly to those who posted the question. So the first question we have is, how do you compare the cost of multiple suppliers in a priori to determine who will win the PO? And that's to Sebastien.
In fact, very often we don't do that, because in fact we select suppliers at the beginning when we want to put in place the Zero RFQ process. But after we do that, we know in advance that, okay, for this typical type of part, this supplier or this one will be the one that will do the job, because we don't have many suppliers. So remember that we do that for small parts that are very late, defining very late in the process. So we need to get the part very quickly. So we select only local suppliers, and we don't have hundreds of suppliers at the same place, of course. So that's why we put this process in place only with the local supplier that we know that can deliver the part very quickly. So very often for each region, for each site, we have one supplier, and that's all. And to be faster, we just want to have this Zero RFQ process with them.
Thanks, Sebastien. I think we have time for one more question. This one is for James. Do you use a priori with any other customers, and would it be something you would be open to in the future?
I would be open to it in the future, but no, we do not. We kind of got this under our belt the last 2 years, and we'd love to incorporate it in the future deals and future customers.
When you started this process with Alstom, was there much apprehension or concern for setting up your transactions in this way?
There was a little bit of apprehension, but having done business for 20 years with the location and pretty much since we're so close, I trusted that we would get to a point where we'd both either have a win-win or I could walk away. So no, I would say I was pretty comfortable with it.
Okay, thanks, James. I think we're coming towards the end of our time now, so I'd just like to again say thank you for presenting for today. I think it was really insightful. And if anybody has, I appreciate there's some questions that haven't been addressed. I'll attempt to respond directly to those who put those forward. But thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of the conference.